Welcome to the Blessors of Israel podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. I'm blessed to be in studio today with Pastor Rich Jones, who is the founder and chairman of Blessors of Israel. Great to be in studio today with you, Pastor Rich.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here because we have a very important topic to talk about. We are seeing a growing influence economically of China and an alliance of nations that I think has been known by the BRICS acronym. And this is something that the world needs to be aware of. Of course, anyone in America needs to be aware of it, which we'll talk about. But I think believers need to be aware of it also, because it does have implications for the prophetic fulfillment of scriptures in the latter days. So let's start with defining.
BRICS, what are the BRICS nations?
Right. How do you spell BRICS?
BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. It was formed in June 16, 2019, and basically it's comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Mm-hmm. And the growing influence, I mean, just in a short time, that's been 4 years, sorry, bad math. 4 years. Already it is becoming such an economic force that our Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, has recently come out, I'm sure you saw it in the news as well, warning Americans to be prepared.
Exactly.
To be prepared for particularly the devaluation of the dollar, meaning that the dollar will buy less and less on the global scale, and that imports will be growing more and more costly. In other words, it's going to add to American inflation.
So basically, these BRIC nations are seeking to trade with one another without using the dollar.
Okay, yeah. Now let's define what it is.
Yes.
Right. And so a new currency, right, because the world has predominantly traded in dollars. I mean, all the oil trade has been in dollars for many years, probably back to the 70s or before. And so the dollar market has been strong, which has made the dollar strong around the world for many, many years. But there's pressure now to form this alliance and to create this new currency because I think of that influence. The nations are concerned about how much power that gives America. Now, we're seeing that in Russia, for example.
I mean, basically, a lot of this began to really snowball when there were sanctions put on Russia because of the invasion of Ukraine.
And many nations saw that Russia, which was in many ways a very large player on the economic scene, had seemingly been brought to its knees, or at least weakened tremendously by sanctions. So a lot of nations are very concerned about that kind of power. In other words, that could happen to them.
But they didn't experience what I believe the administration of the United States thought the sanctions would do, because you had China and these other nations, the BRICS nations, come alongside and basically shore up what was lacking because of the sanctions.
And so, in fact, therefore, some of the sanctions have not had the impact that they could have had.
Exactly.
Because of the influence of the BRICS nations, particularly the Chinese yuan. And so we need to be very cognizant of what's happening, because not only are we talking now about some of the key players you mentioned already, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, but now there are a growing number of nations in the world that want to and are applying to. I know you're up to date on this more than I am.
Yeah.
What would you say is regard to the amount of countries and what countries are wanting to be part of this?
Yeah, I think they're concerned about what they saw happen to Russia, and they're looking for that alternative. Plus, I think they're opposed to the United States fundamentally.
Right.
And so they're looking for another player, some other way that they can have a stake in the global economy without the risk of being sanctioned themselves. So you're going to have countries like Iran that's applied. Iraq recently applied.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very fast. You have Venezuela, Mexico, south
I'm
of
not
our
surprised
border.
by Venezuela.
Yes.
Mexico,
Yes.
that's interesting.
So you have some of our allies, Turkey, part of NATO.
They're part of NATO.
They have applied.
Mm-hmm.
And you have countries like Saudi Arabia who are considering application.
Now, is Turkey part of the euro? I don't believe they are.
I don't believe they are either.
Yeah, so this would give them an economic base.
Exactly.
Since they're not in the euro.
So very, very concerning to see how some of these countries are allies of the United States,
Yes.
but they're looking for these alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these nations, which is also interesting, these nations are also buying gold at alarming rates.
Right.
And so that has caused some to speculate that this meeting in August of the BRIC nations, that they're going to announce that there's some type of alternative that's out there that's backed by the gold that's been purchased by these nations.
But ultimately, when you look at, you didn't even finish that list.
No,
I
it's
think
a
there's
long, long list.
A long list of nations that want to be part of this
Yes.
BRICS alliance, economic alliance.
South America, Africa, Europe, Asia,
Yes.
all over.
All over the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why our own Secretary of the Treasury, Yellen, is warning Americans. And this is why we need to be very careful. We are warned. This is growing. And ultimately, let me just submit that the behemoth in that mix is China.
Exactly.
And their influence is going to only get stronger.
So you say we should be alert. We need to be warned.
Watch, exactly.
But what should we do?
Well,
What are your thoughts? I mean, we're not obviously financial advisors,
no.
but how can we be like Joseph in the Old Testament, who was prepared? He prepared Egypt for the lean years during
Right.
the times of abundance. What can we do now so that we're prepared?
Well, I think number one, be on the alert. In other words, watch. Right? We need to be not putting our heads in the sand. But this is why that warning came out. Look, the dollar is going to buy less, and the influence of the United States is going to be less. And this is going to play into the events of the latter days. We need to watch. We need to watch for the signs of the times. We know that in the latter days that a broken economic dilemma, for lack of a better word, or disaster, is going to bring forth an Antichrist, right? Who's going to economically control the world. And so all of this is part of that bigger picture. So can we foresee all of the ramifications? No. But we need to watch for the signs of the times. We need to be on the alert. We need to watch. This is a very important factor that will grow in its influence. The American dollar is going to be devalued. Inflation will rise as a result of that. Now, I know this is a different topic, but you add the American debt to that, and you're going to see a greater and greater weakening of the American influence in the world as the United Nations
And
gets
I think
close.
many of these nations are seeing what's going on in the United States, and they're very intelligent individuals. They see what's going on, and they recognize it's unsustainable.
Well, but let's also remember that many of those nations are also indebted up to their eyeballs.
Agreed.
Also, so is China.
But isn't it interesting that they're looking for some type of standard? They're buying gold
Right, true.
to shore up
Right.
the infrastructure
Right.
when things fall apart.
I mean, Russia has been buying gold for many, many years. China has been buying gold. And we see growing and growing concern, and therefore gold has been rising and rising in price. And it is, let's say, the gold standard. Well, what does that mean? That means that there's where the value is going to reside.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so, what is the bottom line?
Well, these are very interesting times. I agree with you, Pastor Rich. We need to be in prayer.
Right.
We need to be alert. We need to be seeking wise counsel in regards to next steps.
Right.
But we also need to see that what's happening right now, God is still on the throne.
Right.
He's in control. Nothing catches him unaware. And things are going to happen according to his plan. And we get to rejoice with the return of Jesus Christ.
Exactly right.
So
And
these
I'll
are
tell
good
you-
things. We don't have to be afraid, but we need to be alert
Exactly.
and prayerful and discerning of what's happening
Jesus
before our
said,
very eyes.
watch.
Exactly.
Right? Watch and be ready. And I think ultimately we need to recognize that there will be a spiritual crisis that will arise in the world. Watch and be ready, and to be on the alert.
Agreed.
And so, I mean, Blessors of Israel, the ministry, that's the whole purpose,
Yes.
right? We need to be watching. We're going to be helping to watch and to see from a biblical perspective the unfolding of events. I mean, we are seeing the world changing before our eyes. We need to stay on the alert.
And that's why when you visit the Blessors of Israel website, go to our newsroom in particular, because there you'll see us focus on these topics. You'll see videos, you'll see articles, news from other sources that deal with these topics, and we specifically look at what's going on with China, with Russia, with Iran, with Saudi Arabia, because of the impact it will ultimately have on Israel. I want to encourage you to check out our website. Just go to blessors.org. That's blessors with an ORS.org. Encourage you also to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble channels. Please visit and like and share our Facebook posts, Twitter and Getter posts as well. And please be in prayer for Blessors of Israel as we launch this new ministry. Consider a donation. We appreciate your partnership with us as we bring these truths out into the masses. We want others to be informed so that they can be alert and not caught off guard. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Shalom, shalom.